The stillness of the Silver Lake Basin was often deceptive. To the uninitiated, it was a mirror of glass and pine, but to those who lived on its shores, it was a landscape of old legacies and new tensions. At the heart of this tension stood the Miller cabin, a sturdy structure of cedar and stone that had been in Alyssa's family since 1952, long before the sprawling manicured development of the Pinnacle at Silver Lake was ever conceived. The Miller property was an island of private ownership. When the Pinnacle HOA was formed in the late 90s, the Millers had legally declined to join, a fact recorded in ironclad county land deeds. However, for Linda Harrow, the HOA's current president, the Miller dock was a jurisdictional eyesore that represented lost revenue. Linda was a woman who treated HOA bylaws as sacred scripture and her position as a mandate for absolute rule. For 2 years, she had bombarded the Millers with lakeside usage fees and compliance assessments. Each time, Alyssa's father had sent back a copy of the deed with a polite but firm note: "Not a member. Not your land. Please stop." But Linda didn't stop. She viewed the Millers' refusal as an act of insurrection. To squash it, she created the Pinnacle Safety and Security Unit, a group of hired men in black tactical vests with HOA cop patches. They weren't licensed security, they were an intimidation squad. The confrontation on the dock. The crisis reached its peak on a Saturday morning. Alyssa, who had recently graduated from the police academy and been sworn in as a county sheriff's deputy, was enjoying a rare day off. She was sitting on her family's private dock, cleaning her fishing gear, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans. Her badge and service weapon were in her bag beside her. A black SUV with amber strobe lights pulled up to the edge of the property line. A man named Greg, wearing one of Linda's HOA cop vests and carrying a duty belt that looked far too heavy for a civilian, marched onto the wooden dock. "You're trespassing on HOA-regulated water access," Greg barked, his voice tight with a manufactured, jittery authority. "There is an outstanding balance of $4,200 on this parcel. I am authorized to seize this dock and detain anyone on it until the sheriff arrives to process the lien." Alyssa didn't stand up immediately. She looked at the man with the calm, observant eyes of a trained investigator. "Greg, I know who you are. I also know this land is private. You're the one trespassing. I suggest you walk back to your truck and call Linda." "I don't take suggestions from non-compliant squatters," Greg snarled. He reached for his holster, the badge and the barrel. In a moment of catastrophic escalation, Greg drew a 9mm handgun. He didn't just display it, he leveled the barrel directly at Alyssa's face. "I'm making an HOA arrest," he shouted, his hands shaking. "Get on your knees." Alyssa's heart rate spiked, but her training took over. This was no longer a neighborly dispute, it was an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. She slowly reached into her bag, not for her gun, but for her leather badge wallet. She flipped it open, the gold star of the county sheriff's department catching the morning sun. "Greg, look at the badge," Alyssa said, her voice dropping into a command presence tone, steady, cold, and unwavering. "I am a sworn deputy sheriff. You are currently pointing a firearm at a law enforcement officer. That is a felony. Drop the weapon now, or the consequences will be permanent." Rather than backing down, Greg's face twisted in a mixture of panic and stubbornness. Linda Harrow had told him for weeks that the local cops were in her pocket, and that the Millers were fake lawyers. He believed his HOA commission protected him. "You're not a deputy. That's a fake badge." Greg yelled, stepping forward. The defensive action. As Greg advanced, closing the distance to less than 5 feet, Alyssa recognized the ODA loop of a person about to pull the trigger. She didn't have time to draw her own weapon. As Greg lunged to grab her arm, Alyssa used a lightning-fast defensive tactic. She parried his forearm, redirected the muzzle away from her body, and applied a wristlock that sent his handgun clattering into the wood of the dock. Greg, now fueled by adrenaline and rage, didn't stop. He threw a blind punch at her head. Alyssa stepped back, drew her service weapon in a single fluid motion, and fired one controlled shot into Greg's upper thigh, a stop-the-threat maneuver designed to end the physical assault without taking a life. Greg collapsed, screaming. Alyssa immediately kicked his fallen weapon into the lake to secure the scene, then knelt beside him to apply pressure to the wound. With her other hand, she keyed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy 412. I have an officer involved shooting at the Silver Lake private docks. Suspect down, 1 GSW to the leg. Send EMS and backup immediately. Suspect attempted to execute an HOA arrest at gunpoint." The house of cards collapses. The arrival of the sheriff's department was a whirlwind of blue and red lights. The scene was processed with the meticulousness reserved for crimes against officers. Greg, while being loaded into the ambulance, began to babble. Linda said it was okay. He cried to the arresting officers. She said they were outside the law. She said if I showed the gun, they'd pay. She promised the sheriff wouldn't interfere with HOA business. The confession was the key. While Alyssa was being interviewed by Internal Affairs, a standard procedure that quickly cleared her of any wrongdoing given the clear video from her dock security cameras, deputies were already at the Pinnacle HOA office. Linda Harrow saw the cruisers coming. She tried to make a break for it in her Mercedes, heading for the county line with a suitcase full of unallocated HOA funds. She was stopped 3 miles away. The legal reckoning. The trial exposed the dark underbelly of Linda's regime. It turned out she had been running an extortion racket, using the security unit to frighten elderly residents into paying fees that went straight into her personal accounts. Greg, the enforcer, after recovering from his wound, he accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison for aggravated assault on a peace officer and criminal impersonation. His HOA cop vest was entered into the County Museum of What Not to Do. Linda Harrow, the president, she faced a mountain of charges, including conspiracy to commit extortion and directing an unlawful armed operation. The judge was unsparing, sentencing her to 7 years in prison and ordering the total liquidation of her assets to repay the victims. Conclusion: the line in the sand. The Pinnacle HOA was eventually dissolved by court order, replaced by a much smaller, strictly administrative group with no enforcement powers. The Miller cabin remains exactly where it has always been, on private land, governed by the laws of the state, not the whims of a neighbor. Alyssa returned to duty a month later. The incident at the dock became a case study at the academy, a reminder that authority isn't something you buy at a tactical shop or print on a business card. Real power belongs to the law, and those who attempt to impersonate it eventually find that the law has a very long, very firm arm.